football fans, the Washington Commanders opened their preseason with a genuinely solid 20-7 victory over the Miami Dolphins, but that final score is honestly not the headline coming out of this game. A scary knee injury to backup quarterback Marcus Mariota has cast a real shadow over an otherwise encouraging night. And the organization's tight-lipped response is doing absolutely nothing to ease anybody's nerves. So today, we are breaking down every single injury update from this game, and then diving into a full list of winners and losers from this preseason opener, because there is genuinely a lot worth discussing beyond just the final score. Let's start with the injury news that has this entire fan base holding its breath, because Marcus Mariota left this game early with a knee injury, and the circumstances surrounding it are genuinely concerning. It appeared to be a non-contact injury, which immediately raises red flags for anybody who has watched enough football. Mariota took a significant hit on the previous play after delivering a big completion down the field, and it is entirely possible the actual injury happened on that specific play. But it was on the very next snap, as he turned to hand the football off to his running back, that his knee seemingly gave out on him, causing him to sit down right on the field logo. He was ultimately able to walk off the field under his own power, which is generally considered a positive sign, but as any football fan unfortunately knows all too well, players have walked off under their own power before, only to later be diagnosed with a torn ankle. As for the latest official update, the organization has offered essentially nothing concrete, with head coach Dan Quinn stating there was no update available on Mariota and that more information might not come until this coming Sunday. That kind of extended silence naturally leaves fans bracing for the worst, though it is entirely possible independent NFL insiders could report additional details before that official Sunday update ever arrives. Mariota was unfortunately not the only Commander to exit this game early with an injury concern. Cornerback Fred Davis had to be carted off the field after dealing with what he described afterward as a full body cramp. While being carted off understandably looked concerning in the moment, this specific issue appears to be nothing more than a cramping situation. And he should be perfectly fine moving forward, hopefully with a bit more diligent hydration heading into future games. Additionally, cornerback Antonio Hamilton Sr. exited this game with a lower body injury and did not return, with no further update currently available on his specific status. That is a particularly notable situation given that Hamilton is currently right in the middle of a genuinely competitive battle for one of the final available spots on this team's cornerback depth chart, and he had actually been playing a genuinely solid game before this injury occurred, making any potential missed time a real unfortunate setback to his roster case. Now let's shift over to breaking down exactly how this game unfolded, starting with a rocky opening stretch. On the very first drive of the game, Miami's top backup quarterback and their more established offensive personnel drove right down the field against a Washington defense that was essentially playing without the majority of its own starters, aside from a couple of specific rookies getting extended run. Miami's running back tallied 39 yards on that opening drive alone, marching right down the field with relative ease. But after that specific opening sequence, this game largely became a story of the Commanders taking full control. Let's get into the individual winners from this contest, because there were plenty worth celebrating. Rookie quarterback Nathan Kalmanis out of Rutgers earns the first spotlight as a genuine standout performer. Despite finishing with a completion percentage right around 60% according to the box score, he looked genuinely composed and in command of this offense throughout his time on the field. He showed off some particularly impressive play-action reps, turning his back to the defense, properly setting his feet, working through his rhythm within the design of the play, and then calmly delivering accurate throws down the field. By comparison, he genuinely looked more in control of this offense than veteran Sam Hartman did during this same game, who appeared visibly rattled in the pocket, continuing a troubling pattern that has unfortunately followed him throughout recent preseasons. To be fair, Kalmanis was working primarily against Miami's third and fourth string defenders. while Hartman faced a slightly higher caliber of competition. But from a pure process standpoint, Kalmanis simply looked like the more composed, more NFL-ready quarterback on this specific night. The running back position also produced a couple of genuinely standout performances that stole the show on the offensive side of the ball. Robert Henry Jr. out of Utsa averaged an impressive 2 yards per carry and scored a genuinely nice touchdown run, showcasing real juice and explosiveness despite being somewhat undersized. He also brings legitimate return specialist upside, and if he can continue proving that dual value both as a runner and as a return option, an established veteran running back currently dealing with his own injury situation might genuinely need to watch his back. To be clear, Henry likely still faces a genuinely uphill battle to actually make this final 53-man roster, but this specific performance likely solidified at minimum a practice squad spot for him. Rookie draft pick Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt out of Penn State also turned in a genuinely productive night, receiving a massive workload of 23 total carries. An enormous number even for a regular season game, let alone a preseason contest. He finished with 85 total yards and a touchdown, consistently picking up positive yardage and converting key situational downs throughout the game. His per carry average settled at a fairly modest 3.7 yards, but overall, this represented a genuinely strong, encouraging night for him. Receiver Jalen Lane also turned in a genuinely nice performance, leading the team, or at least the earlier rotations, in total receptions. He looked like he was consistently getting open and running quality routes, appearing like a legitimate potential contributor within this receiver room, something he genuinely needed given some concerning drop issues that had plagued him throughout the earlier stretches of training camp. He finished with 3 catches for 31 yards, an average of just over 10 yards per reception. A genuinely encouraging bounce-back performance worth continuing to monitor throughout the remainder of this preseason, given his natural speed and explosive upside. Tight end Ben Sinnott also delivered a genuinely strong overall performance, throwing an excellent block that helped spring a big running play in the first half, while also hauling in some nice receptions of his own, including a nice catch from Sam Hartman on a bootleg concept. He looked impressive both as a blocker and as a pass catcher throughout this game, a genuinely encouraging sign for a former Day 2 draft investment finally getting himself more involved in the mix. On the defensive side, interior defender Shaka Toney had a genuinely strong showing specifically against the run, consistently holding his ground at the line of scrimmage and making a real case for himself as a valuable depth piece on this final roster, or at minimum a legitimate practice squad mainstay if he narrowly misses the final cut. Linebacker Ali Cajo-Rex and defensive back Malik Spencer both came away with interceptions during this game, part of an overall strong defensive showing that saw this team finish with 3 total takeaways. Defensive tackle Brian Cobb also turned in a genuinely strong performance working with the third-team defense, consistently making plays, getting after the quarterback, and holding up well against the run, making a real case for himself to stick on this team's practice squad this season. And more broadly, this entire third-string defensive unit deserves real credit as a collective winner from this game. To be fair, it certainly helps that Miami's own third-string offensive personnel were genuinely struggling throughout this stretch, but this specific group still held their own admirably, playing with genuinely high energy all the way through the fourth quarter rather than simply coasting through a comfortable lead. A real credit to new defensive coordinator Dante Jones for keeping this specific group locked in and competitive for all 4 quarters of what could have easily become a forgettable, low-effort finish. Now let's shift over to the list of losers from this contest, starting with the aforementioned Antonio Hamilton Sr. To be clear, if this specific injury ends up being relatively minor, he should probably be reclassified as a winner given how well he actually played throughout this game. But if he ends up missing any real practice time as a result, that absence could genuinely benefit other cornerbacks like Rasul Douglas and Fabian Moreau, who are similarly competing for that exact same roster spot. Obviously, Marcus Mariota lands squarely on this list as well, given the genuine uncertainty and concern surrounding his knee injury. The complete lack of immediate information from this organization, with an explicit statement that no meaningful updates should be expected until Sunday, does not exactly inspire confidence. That said, there is a reasonable argument that if this injury were something as severe as a torn ankle, that kind of diagnosis would likely have been confirmed and reported relatively quickly. The fact that the organization apparently needs additional testing, potentially including further imaging, to properly determine the full extent of this injury could actually suggest it is not quite as catastrophic as it initially appeared when he went down. Regardless, there are genuine thoughts and prayers heading Mariota's way as this organization awaits further clarity. Sam Hartman also lands on this list of losers, and while he did have some genuinely decent moments throughout this game, including working through his progressions effectively on a couple of plays and delivering some nice completions over the middle of the field, he also threw a genuinely poor interception and once again appeared visibly rattled and hurried within the pocket throughout stretches of this game, continuing an unfortunately familiar pattern from his recent preseason performances. Rookie Nathan Kalmanis simply looked like the more composed, more impressive quarterback throughout this specific night, which is not exactly the story this coaching staff wanted heading into this season. The broader wide receiver room also arguably qualifies as a collective loser from this specific game, at least during the earlier rotations, simply because Sam Hartman's struggles at quarterback limited the opportunities available to several receivers fighting for a limited number of roster spots, including players who saw very few or even zero targets throughout the earlier portions of this contest. Given how genuinely crowded and competitive this specific position group remains heading into final roster cuts, having a struggling quarterback throwing them the football during this critical evaluation window certainly did not do that room any favors in terms of properly showcasing their respective cases. And finally, defensive lineman Jonah Newton rounds out this list of losers from tonight's contest. Despite being a player many fans were genuinely excited to watch, he struggled to consistently affect the opposing quarterback and was noticeably driven backward in the run game during that difficult opening defensive drive against Miami's offensive line, a genuinely humbling sequence to witness. That specific struggle reflects a broader, known weakness in his overall game, an inability to consistently hold up against double-team blocking or reliably defend the run at a high level, which is precisely why this coaching staff has invested in other proven veteran interior defenders specifically to handle those early down run-stopping responsibilities. While Newton's own role likely remains more heavily focused on specific pass-rushing situations moving forward. So there you have it, football fans, a genuinely comprehensive breakdown of this Commanders preseason opener, encouraging performances from several rookies and depth pieces, some real concerns surrounding the health of key players like Marcus Mariota and Antonio Hamilton Sr., and a 20-7 victory that, while ultimately meaningless in the standings, still offered plenty of genuinely valuable evaluation opportunities for this coaching staff heading into the remainder of the preseason. So now it is your turn, and we genuinely want to hear what you think about everything covered in this recap. What grade would you personally give this Commanders team for their performance in this preseason opener? Are you genuinely worried about Marcus Mariota's knee injury given the lack of immediate clarity from this organization? And who was your personal MVP from this specific game? Drop your thoughts and predictions down in the comments section below because we absolutely love hearing what all of you think. If this breakdown helped you get fully caught up on everything from this preseason opener, do us a favor and smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach even more passionate fans just like yourself. And if you have not already subscribed, now is the perfect time, because we are going to be right here bringing you every single injury update and every bit of behind-the-scenes coverage all the way through this incredibly compelling season. Thanks so much for watching, and we will catch you in the very next update. Hail to the Commanders!